Alright, this video is primarily for my online students who are about to start their revision essays for my class. In this video, I'm going to briefly talk about structural changes that you can make to your essay. That's important, but I also want you to understand the basic principle of the revision assignment. It's going to be unlike revisions you've done in the past, and that's very important. If you were in class, hopefully you would have come to class already having read the directions. And I think you would understand them. I think all of my students do. But my students always have a lot of questions, and so I want to address some of the major questions that my students have so that you who don't have the benefit of seeing me face to face will still be able to hear from me directly that some of the things you're worried about don't matter. So, for the revision essay, I'm asking you to do two things. First, you should update an existing essay and correct the things that you got wrong in it the first time. Second, and more importantly, you're going to revise the essay so that it's appropriate for a different audience. This essay will work best if your new audience is dramatically different from your original one. All of you presumably wrote your first draft of your essay for me, your instructor. If you choose to write the second draft of your essay for your high school teacher, it's going to make it very difficult to do some of the changes that I've asked you to do and to change your essay to the degree that I've asked you to change it. So I would recommend choosing an audience that is as dramatically different from me as you can imagine. It might be a relative. It might be readers of a travel guide coming to New Orleans for the first time. It might be a 7th or 8th grade class struggling to learn the tools of rhetoric for the first time. Use your imagination and choose an audience that you would write to or address in a very different way than you would talk to me. You can change the format of this essay extensively. You do still need to use correct grammar and traditional sentence structure, and if you use cited material, I'd like you to still include citations. But the format that you use to present the information can change. The original assignment length no longer matters. Things like the number of sources you were required to have or the types of sources you were required to have are not as important to me in this revision as seeing that you've been able to take some of the basic ideas of your original essay and present them to a different audience in a manner that is suitable for a new and different audience. Students who have done the best with this in the past have chosen a very specific target audience or goal. This might be a newspaper article in a local newspaper, and you might even want to look at a few newspapers to see what that would look like. You might choose to revise your essay for a particular smaller, younger audience, and you might want to read a book that's written to that audience so you can get a feel for the type of tone that's written to that sort of person. If you have a smaller sibling, and you want to address your smaller sibling, think about the language and the explanations that you would need to provide so that your sibling could understand things like rhetorical devices and even quotations from a story. I'm most interested in seeing how you transform your existing writing and make it appropriate for another group of people. However, there's a small caveat to this. One thing I've asked you to do is to write me 2 paragraphs, and the first one should go back to the feedback that I left you on your original essay, and you should explain how you've addressed the pieces of feedback that I gave you. If I said, you have a lot of comma splices, or this essay's missing citations, just add those in, fix them, and then tell me in your paragraph that you've updated them. Note that it's important to me as I grade that if I mark one instance of something, that you change it throughout your essay. So if I point out that you're missing a citation on a particular sentence, still go through the rest of your essay and make sure all the other sentences have the citations they need as well. It's also okay in this paragraph to tell me that one of the pieces of feedback that I gave you no longer applies. For instance, if your original essay came in under length, and now you're revising your essay to be a single column in a travel magazine, you can tell me my new travel magazine has articles that only tend to be about 500 words, and so my essay does not meet the requested length because in the process of updating it for my new audience, that became irrelevant. You should definitely use that paragraph to explain to me any changes that you've made in accordance with my feedback, but you can also use that to explain why you haven't been able to make changes that I recommended in my original feedback. Use it for both in order to earn the maximum number of points on this assignment. In addition, your second paragraph should explain how you've revised your essay to meet the needs of a specific audience. Really think about the things that that new audience will need. Will they need definitions? Will they need longer explanations? Will they need longer or shorter quotations? Will your paper now need to be a certain length to fit in a new context, on a single page, on an advertisement? Whatever you choose, the options are limitless, but as you write your revision, it's important that you articulate to me how you have adapted your essay. I will be using those 2 paragraphs that you write to look for elements that you have changed in your original essay. I'll also be weighing it against the feedback that I gave you, which is why it's important, if you can't address a piece of feedback because your new audience or tone doesn't permit it, that you acknowledge that and you explain why you were unable to do so. I've already posted some videos that should explain to you how to change individual paragraphs and particular sentences in your essay to update them for a new audience, or just even to get yourself out of your probable affection for the words that you've already written, which are good words and great in their own contexts. They may need a little bit of updating to respond to my feedback, but in general, what you have is great. Instead of thinking about this as fixing the original essay, I want you to think about this as updating it for your new audience. And you'll be making changes both at the paragraph level to individual sentences, even perhaps omitting and adding new information, but you'll also want to think about whether there are any structural changes that would benefit your essay in particular. For instance, in this essay, I won't be holding you to the original grading rubric, so things like topic sentences and thesis statements are less important to me than seeing how well you've adapted and played with the words that you have. Don't worry about having a formal introduction if the type of writing you choose to emulate doesn't have an introduction. You may even not have a formal thesis statement at the end of a first paragraph or in an easily identifiable location. Think about the structure of your essay. What should go first for this new audience and in this new structure? How long should your paragraphs be? How long should your sentences be? You may find that your entire essay needs to be reorganized so that a different piece of information appears most prominently, and that's okay. Part of this revision process is about getting you out of the rut of a 5-paragraph essay, something that most of you will have learned to do and have practiced doing very well, and helping you see that different forms of writing are useful and important for different audiences. In the process, shake up your organization. Try putting different paragraphs and different ideas first. Think about what kinds of transitions would make the most sense within a new and particular context. As long as you can defend the changes that you've made in the paragraphs that you write about your revision, you will be just fine. However, some of you are still going to panic about this, and that's okay too. Email me, ask me questions, reach out to me if you're not sure that what you're doing is right. It probably is, but I'm always happy to answer questions if you're not feeling entirely confident. This should be an essay where you get to explore and experiment and practice writing for an audience that might even have some practical purpose as you progress in your lives. I hope you'll have fun doing it. It's one of my favorite essays to read.